The NHL playoffs are only a month away, which means the battle for the final wildcard spots, division victories, and the President's trophies are just going to get hotter. And luckily, we know the temperature these teams are cooking at with our latest power rankings. Let's get started in the bottom tier. Let's not stay too long on these three teams that are in the darkness, the Sharks, Blackhawks, and Predators. They're all terrible. They're not making the playoffs. They're in the competition to see who gets to pick Misa or Hagens first overall. Up a tier from them, we have four teams that I consider to be garbage: the Flyers, Sabres, Ducks, and Penguins. Good week for the Penguins, though. Got to give it to them. They managed to go 3-0 on the week, including impressive victories over New Jersey and Vegas, which only serves to hurt their own draft lottery picks. So as a fan of the division rival, please keep winning, Pittsburgh. Very happy to see it. Up a tier are the old Yeller teams. Like I said last week, these are the teams that are just old, beat down, and desperately need to rebuild. The Islanders, Bruins were there last week, but now we add the Kraken to the mix. Even though they're not necessarily an old team and they do have some young talent, they are just a rudderless ship. They need direction. They need to fully commit to going young instead of spending like drunken sailors like they did last offseason. Up above them, we have finally the teams that are actually in playoff discussion, starting with the Fringe playoff teams, which includes the Utah Hockey Club, Vancouver Canucks, Detroit Red Wings, St. Louis Blues, Montreal Canadiens, and New York Rangers. Now, I know the Rangers and Canucks are both technically in the final wildcard spots in their respective conferences, and there are some teams that are below them in the standings that I have higher in the tier list. That's because, just quite frankly, the analytics do not back up these being very good teams. Vancouver, in particular, one of the worst expected goal ratios in the NHL and a -18 goal differential in the league. I think both of these teams are very susceptible to being jumped. Now up to the next tier, we have my beloved Chaos Goblins, the Blue Jackets, and the Flames. Both teams who are currently sitting on the outside of the playoffs, and for the Blue Jackets, it was a very rough week, with a massive chance to get a stranglehold on a wildcard spot, playing the reeling New Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers, who they're competing against for the wildcard spots. They went 0-4 on the week. 2 losses to New Jersey, a 4-0 shutout to the Rangers that was accompanied by a 4-0 loss to the Vegas Golden Knights. As a result, the Blue Jackets are 2 points back of the Rangers for the final wildcard spot, though they do have a game in hand. Moving up a tier, we have two teams that I think are solidly in the playoffs, but I don't think are destined for deep runs: the Minnesota Wild and New Jersey Devils. The Devils obviously dealing with a bunch of injuries, including Jack Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, Jonas Siegenthaler. The Wild, of course, have been without Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson-Ek, now Brodin and Foligno both out. These teams are missing a lot of firepower, and unless their players magically heal right before the playoffs, I don't think that they have much of a shot. Up next, the Ottawa Senators get their own tier, and I say, you're doing great, sweetie. I love that the Senators are doing so well. They had a great week last week, a big win over Toronto, and beat two teams that they solidly should have in Boston and Philadelphia. The Sens are now 5 points clear of the final wildcard spot, and in all likelihood, they are going to be the first wildcard team, which unfortunately for them means they're probably going to be playing one of Florida, Tampa, or Toronto in the first round. Personally, I'm rooting for Toronto. A Battle of Ontario would be a lot of fun, and even though the Senators are probably not going to be favored to win any of those, it's nice to see Ottawa's rebuild finally bearing fruit and them making the playoffs. Now above Ottawa in their own tier, I have two teams in their own tier for Fraud Watch, those being the Los Angeles Kings and Vegas Golden Knights. Both of these teams are at the top of the standings, but I have some very big concerns about both of them. We'll start with Vegas, who put up a real clunker of a week. Their only win, as I mentioned, came against the Columbus Blue Jackets. They lose to Pittsburgh in overtime, Buffalo in a shootout, and the Detroit Red Wings. These are all teams that if you're one of the best teams in the NHL, you should be beating. As for the LA Kings, I know that they have been on a bit of a run, but the difference between them at home and on the road just grows more and more stark by the day. 23-3-4 at home, 13-18-5 on the road. Right now, they are one of two teams slated to make the playoffs who are under 500 on the road, the other being Carolina, who's just 1 game under 500. And given that LA is unlikely to win their division or even come in second in the Pacific, they are going to have to play the majority of their games on the road. And I really don't like their odds playing better teams at home that they won't drop at least one of them. Now, there's a month left in the regular season, so there's still time for them to turn this around, but I'm giving the biggest side eye to both of these teams. Next tier up, we have the Cup contenders, and there are quite a few of them. The Maple Leafs, Oilers, Lightning, Capitals, Panthers, Avalanche, and Hurricanes, all teams who could win the Stanley Cup. They wouldn't be my picks right now if the playoffs started, but I could see any of them winning the Stanley Cup. But there are two teams who I think are far above the rest, the Dallas Stars and the Winnipeg Jets, who interestingly had opposite weeks. The Stars had a bad one where they lost to those Winnipeg Jets and then also Colorado at home. Two tough games to be sure. But when you're the elite of the elite, you want to see a little bit of a better performance. On the other hand, Winnipeg did beat Dallas, but also took down the New York Rangers and the Seattle Kraken.